Imagine stepping into your high school, where the laughter of friends and the buzz of daily life seem normal, until strange whispers follow you down empty hallways, shadowy figures lurk around every corner, and the unexplainable twists turn your once familiar world into a waking nightmare. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to dive deeper into 5 of the creepiest high school horror stories. High school is a place full of good memories, but sometimes what happens in those hallways and classrooms goes beyond the ordinary. These stories will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about school. From scary encounters to unexplained events, these stories will send a chill down your spine. 1. The Ghost in the Auditorium. In a small town of Russia, the high school was not just a place of learning, it was the heart of the place. Probably the most valued part of that school was the grand old-fashioned auditorium. Behind the claps, behind the bright lights, there was something bizarre. The story goes that in the early years, there was an accident. A young girl named Kathy was getting ready for a school play when she fell from the rafters above the stage and died tragically. It's said since then, her spirit never truly left the auditorium. Another girl named Sarah didn't believe in ghost stories. As a junior, she preferred working behind the scenes and spent hours helping at the backstage. One such evening, after an exhaustive day of rehearsals, Sarah chose to remain late and complete adjusting the props for their upcoming show. The others had gone home early, leaving her alone in the auditorium. As Sarah moved around the stage, arranging props and adjusting curtains, she suddenly heard the sound of footsteps echoing in the empty hall. First off, she thought it was just the old floors of wood groaning, but the steps continued to get louder. After some time, the footsteps stopped, and then a silence took over. Sarah dismissed it all, but then the lights above started flickering. Long shadows started to cover the stage. A cold wind had blown across the room, although the doors were shut. She felt her heartbeat start to accelerate. Then out of the corner of her eye, she saw something, a form, standing in the wings off stage, a pale, still figure watching her. It first occurred to her that it might have been one of the teachers, but neither did the figure move nor speak. Something in its presence clung on eerily. Sarah took one step ahead, and then in a flash of lightning movement, it was gone. Again, the lights blinked merrily. A wave of dread washed over her. Her hands shaking, Sarah grasped her bag, deciding that her work could wait until tomorrow. She ran from the auditorium. She told her friends the next day, still shaken. She had expected them to burst out laughing at her, telling her she must be crazy, but instead, their faces went white. One of the girls, a girl called Lily, looked seriously at her and told her the whole story about Kathy. Lily said that she also thought it was just a myth, until last year she had seen her in the auditorium. From that day on, Sarah never stayed after school and tried as much to keep her distance from the auditorium. She did not want to take any chances lest she spot that ghostly figure once again. 2. The Haunted Yearbook. It was the start of the senior year when students from Ridgewood High School, New Jersey, noticed something strange in the library. Each year, going back to the 1960s, old yearbooks were displayed. The yearbook from 1985 had never been opened. It was like perfectly new, while the others were faded and worn. But the photos in the yearbook were quite disturbing. Students flipped through it, realizing that there were faces in the book nobody knew. What made the photos worse were blank, hollow expressions. A student photographer named Emma was the first one to experience something weird. Working late in the library one night, she said that she saw one of the faces in the yearbook blink. She brushed it off and was convinced it must have been her tiredness. But the next day, when she opened the yearbook again, one of the students she had never seen before in the book was present there. Instead, there was only a chair vacated. Soon, more students started to notice the changes in the yearbook. People missing, pages rearranging, and new faces coming in. Some of the new faces were not students from the past, but from their current senior class. But worse yet, every time somebody's photo would appear inside this haunted yearbook, she would disappear in real life. But it happened first to Jack. He'd been going around, bragging to everyone how the yearbook was some stupid prank. Then the next week, he didn't show up at school. His parents claimed all of the kids had just run off, but no one believed it. He had been perfectly normal that previous afternoon. When his friends looked in the yearbook, his picture had taken on the same blank expression as the rest, and then he disappeared. More time passed, and it was seen that many more students disappeared. Desperate for answers, Emma found the truth of a fire in 1985 that burned the old building. So many students died that year. Nobody would ever know where that accursed yearbook had come from. 2 days later, there was Emma's picture in that yearbook, and then she was also gone. It rests still in that library, waiting for the next set of students to stake their claim. 3. The classroom that time forgot. An old high school, abandoned for over 10 years, lay quietly in the back of Kurumi town, nestled on the hills of Japan. Legends say that in 1987, during that area's typhoon season, Class 3C was preparing for something to do after school, but nobody was really surprised when a typhoon struck. The rain lashed against the windows and the lights went out. Instantly at 6:13, all the students of Class 3C vanished. The classroom that had been supposed to be they in was found completely empty. All the remaining students of that school searched everywhere, but it just seemed they had been rubbed off from the face of the earth. The police gave up and closed the case, unable to solve the mystery. Years later, strange stories began to circulate about the school. A brave high school girl, Yuki, from a neighboring school wanted to find out the truth. One rainy evening, much similar to the night of the typhoon, together with 3 friends, they gained entry into the old building. They made their way to Class 3C. When they finally reached the door, they paused. The door creaked as they pushed it open. The desks, backpacks, and even an old piece of chalk sat upon the teacher's desk, untouched for decades. At first, nothing happened. But then, as the clock struck 6:13 p.m., the room seemed to shift. The lights flickered, and suddenly the air was filled with the sound of chatter and laughter, as if an invisible class was still there. Yuki looked at the chalkboard and saw something written. "We never left." She spun around, ran, but the door slammed shut of its own. Her friends all yelled, pounding at the door, but it would not budge. When they looked back at the room, the desks were now all filled with ghostly figures of the lost students of Class 3C staring at them. Finally, Yuki and her friends broke out of that building. By now, the clock was already at 6:14 p.m. They never spoke a word about whatever had occurred inside that room. The empty schoolhouse was eventually demolished 1 year later, but the legend went that if you went to the exact spot where Class 3C had been at precisely 6:13 p.m., you could still make out the whispering of children that never went away. 4. The Whispering Walls. The small-town high school on the edge of the Karoo Desert in South Africa never had a word spread regarding its reputation. The reputation of St. Lucia High School was all because of its oldest structure in that school, which once used to be a boarding house but now lies abandoned. It was given the name the Whispering Walls. This boarding house was closed down in the 1960s after a tragic occurrence involving a girl named Zanelle. She was always bullied. She would spend most of the time in her room. One stormy night, some bullies locked her in the cellar of the building as a prank, laughing as they walked away and promising to come back. They never did. That night, the building caught fire. Though most of them managed to escape, the students had forgotten Zanelle. The body of Zanelle was never found. Mysterious things began to happen immediately the fire started. From the wall, there were whispers that sounded like someone wanted help. Others said they could see Zanelle's shadow running in the burned remains of the boarding house. Years later, the old building of the school was sealed off. One night, a group of adventurous seniors thought they would check it out. They broke into the boarding house. At first, it was lifeless, but as time ticked closer to the striking of 12, it began to get colder, and one faintly could hear a girl crying. Suddenly, the whispers in the walls became audible. The students fought with it, coming out of where they were, but the doors banged. They heard one by one their names in a murmur, but with a clear tone. In an instant, the whispers stopped. Finally, when the children broke free. From that night on, they knew the truth. Zanelle had never left. The walls still whispered her name, and anyone who chose to listen well may hear their own name too. 5. The Silent Choir. St. Marian Gymnasium had proudly stood as a tribute to the quiet town of Altenburg, Germany. It was famous for its prestigious choir, which had sung in the Great Hall. Few were aware that it had a silent choir, a bunch of students from the 1800s who disappeared after some horrific incident happened during a rehearsal. The legend would have it that one night there was a great fire in the hall. All the students who were rehearsing died in the flames. The grand hall was rebuilt and the tragedy forgotten, but the past never truly vanished away. One evening, Anna and her friends stayed after practice, as did the rest of the choir members. While putting their instruments away in the old grand hall, one suddenly heard the soft sound of a choir singing. They thought at first that it was an echo from another room, but the sound was getting louder and the melody was clearer. Anna froze. The rest hushed. The music rose from the walls. The lights flickered in the grand hall. Shadows moved at the walls, alive and dancing to a rhythm. Then the door slammed shut. Anna screamed and ran towards the door in despair, but it would not move. Suddenly it went ice cold. Then out of the corner of her eyes, she caught something move upon the stage. Clothed in 19th century choir uniforms, standing in perfect formation and singing, their eyes void and fixed upon the students. As soon as they tried to get away, those ghostly figures swung their way. The students clamped their palms over their ears, yet the sound rammed right through them. The music had stopped as suddenly as it started. The lights sputtered to life, and with an agonizing moan, the creaky door yawned open. Anna and her friends stumbled out into the hall. They never spoke again about what they had seen that night, but for years afterward, when they passed the great hall, strains of ghostly music still rose into the air, the silent choir eternally rehearsing. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more creepy stories. Which of these stories gave you a thrilling experience? Let us know. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that are real.